So in our last video, we started learning about an intro to CSS. So in this video, we are going to start learning about the CSS background property. So we have already saw the background color. So if you want to impute the background color, so you use let me remove it and just write it again. Okay. So use the background color if it is color. So you can use the English name, for instance. Maybe if it is black, you can write it as black, for instance. So you save it. If you know the XML code, you can write it. So we're going to look at that. So once you go back to your browser and refresh, so you see we have changed the background color from that dark green to black, for instance. Okay, so you can use the hexadecimal. Let's say, for instance, the hexadecimal of black is, so you can write it either 3 zeros or 6 zeros, for instance. Okay, that's hexadecimal. Okay, still the same thing. Or you can use the RGB combination, red, green, blue combination, for instance. We have something like this, for instance, RGB, for instance. Okay, so now let's say 0. We want to specify the black. We want to give it a value of black, for instance. So this black, for instance. Okay, so once you save it, it's still the same thing. So with either method, is much more easier for you. If you prefer to be using the English name, if you prefer to using the hexadecimal, or if you prefer to use the RGB, whatever method is much more easier for you. Okay. So the next property we are going to learn is the background image. So you can have an image as your background instead of a color, for instance. So let's quickly look at how to do something like that. Okay. Let me see if I will just try to use an image here, for instance, just for learning purpose. So let me remove the background color. I don't need it for now. Okay. So background image. Okay. So we are going to use URL. Then you are going to specify where the image is located, for instance. So now, mind you, now we are inside the style.css, inside the folder CSS. But our images are located inside the folder images. So we are going to do something like this, 2 dot. Okay. Since we are going back, we are inside the style.css. The style.css is inside the folder CSS, whereas the images are on the same level with the CSS folder. So we have to do two dots. That's dot dot then slash. So we can access the images folder. So let's just use one, for instance. Okay. Just use this one, for instance. Let me save it. So let's go back to our browser. Let's refresh it. You see we have this as the background image, for instance. So you see the images are repeating itself. So if you don't want the property, you don't want the background image to be repeating, so we're going to look at the next CSS property called the background repeat. Okay, so let's say background repeat. And if you don't want it to repeat, you can say no repeat, for instance. So it's going to remove that default behavior, for instance. Okay, so the next property we're going to learn is the background position. Maybe you don't want it to be aligned on this particular side, you want to move it somewhere else, for instance. So you can use, let's say, a background position. So let's say right top, for instance. Okay, so let's go back to the browser and refresh. You see we have changed where the position of the background image is. Okay, so the next one is the background attachment. Maybe you don't, maybe the page is long, for instance, maybe you don't want the background to be moving as you are moving, you are scrolling down. You want it to be fixed, for instance. Okay, the attachment has many property, many values. Let's say background attachment, background attachment. Okay, so let's say fix. Okay, you don't want as you're scrolling, maybe let the image be fixed on the background, for instance. That's the background attachment, for instance. So all these background color, background image, background repeat, background position, background attachment, you can have it on a single line, for instance. You can have it as, let's say, background, then you can start specifying it from the first one. Let's say the background color. So let's use 00 30 32. Okay, Then next, for instance, if you want to specify a background image, then you can specify URL, then where the image is located, images modular, for instance. Okay, so that's for the background image. And if you want to specify the no repeat, so you can attach no repeat here. Okay, and then if you want to specify the background size, the background position, so you can use the right top, for instance. And lastly, for the background attachment, say fixed, for instance. So all these lines that you saw, so it's the same thing as this line, for instance. So with that, you're able to make your code much more easier, saving much more time. But we'll be using a background as the color. We'll be using a background color. So let us leave it as this background. Then we specify it like this. So let's go back to the browser and refresh. You see, we still have the same effect, for instance. So in the next video, we're going to start learning about CSS height and width.